There is a category of missing persons cases that investigators describe as the most difficult kind, not because the evidence is absent, but because the evidence points unmistakably in one direction, yet the one thing needed to confirm it simply cannot be found. On the night of October 6th, 2024, a 37-year-old mother of four named Suzanne Clark Simpson walked into her home in Olmos Park, Texas, and she was never seen again. What investigators found in the days that followed, the blood, the saw, the burned devices, the silence from the one person who should have been looking for her, built a picture so clear that a grand jury had no hesitation. But the answer to the only question that truly matters has never come. Where is Suzanne? This is her story. Olmos Park is one of the most affluent enclaves in all of San Antonio. It is an independent municipality surrounded entirely by the city. Just a few square miles of manicured streets and established homes, the kind of place that reads, from the outside, as settled, comfortable, safe. Suzanne Clark Simpson had built a life that looked the part. She worked as a real estate agent, a job that required her to be personable, organized, and present, and by all accounts, she was all three. She had 4 children, including a 20-year-old daughter from a prior relationship and a 5-year-old daughter she was raising with her husband, Brad. Friends and family described her as warm, devoted, and deeply connected to the people around her. But behind that exterior, the people closest to Suzanne had been watching something that worried them for some time. She had confided in at least one person, a banker she knew professionally, that her husband had seized her phone before, that he had monitored her movements, that she had told this person, in her own words, if she ever went missing, to look for her in a lake. She said that before October of 2024. She said it out loud to someone who remembered it. Brad Simpson was 53 years old, 16 years Suzanne's senior. He had business interests in the San Antonio area and a social network that granted him access to the kind of private clubs that mark a certain tier of Texas society. On the surface, they were a couple who attended events together, raised a young daughter together, shared a home together. But court documents would later reveal that Suzanne had reported a physical assault by Brad in August of 2023, over a year before she disappeared, and that incident was not isolated. The evening of Sunday, October 6th began at the Argyle, a historic private club in the Alamo Heights neighborhood of San Antonio. Brad and Suzanne attended a party there together, bringing their 5-year-old daughter with them. At some point during the evening, the two began arguing, verbally at first. By around 8:30 p.m., they left the event together. Security footage places the family at an H-E-B grocery store nearby until 8:51 p.m. Whatever was happening between them, they stopped to shop. They moved through the aisles with their daughter, they checked out, and then they drove home. At 9:15 p.m., Suzanne called a family friend. She was at home at that point and left shortly after to go to that friend's house. But at 9:16 p.m., 1 minute later, she called her mother. On that call, Suzanne reported that Brad had mistreated her. She described pain in her arm, her back, and her neck. At almost the exact same moment that Suzanne made that call, her AT&T service was suspended. Brad had access to the account through an app. He used it. She arrived at her friend's house around 9:25 p.m. She was there briefly, and then, for reasons that remain unclear, she went back home. What happened after she walked back through that door is known only partially, and most of what is known comes from 2 sources. One was a neighbor, the other was a 5-year-old child. After 10 p.m., a neighbor near the Simpson residence witnessed something from outside. They saw Suzanne and Brad in a physical struggle. They saw Suzanne break away and run, heading westward. They saw Brad chase after her. They heard screaming. According to the neighbor's statement to authorities, Brad was clearly attempting to prevent Suzanne from running away. Not an argument, not a confrontation, an attempt to stop her from escaping. At some point after the struggle, the neighbor heard a truck start. It drove away. Roughly 1 hour later, it returned. The 5-year-old daughter's account came later through a school counselor. Children this age do not construct narratives with strategic intent. They report what they saw. What this child told the counselor was that Brad had pushed Suzanne against a wall, struck her in the face, hurt her elbow, and then turned off her phone. The last confirmed digital trace of Suzanne was logged at 10:22 p.m. Her older daughter, the 20-year-old, checked the Find My app on her phone. The ping placed Suzanne's device at the Simpson residence. After that, nothing. No signal, no movement, no contact. Suzanne Clark Simpson was never seen or heard from again. The morning of October 7th began with an ordinary act. Brad Simpson drove his 5-year-old daughter to school. He dropped her off. He went about his day. Suzanne was supposed to pick their daughter up from school later that day. She didn't come. Friends who were expecting to hear from Suzanne began trying to reach her. When they couldn't, they called Brad. He told them he hadn't seen her since around 11 the previous night. He said she had lost her phone at the HEB. He hadn't reported her missing. That same morning, surveillance footage at a gas station in Boerne, roughly 30 miles northwest of San Antonio, captured Brad's truck. The time was approximately 11:15 a.m. Brad purchased gasoline in 2 one-gallon water jugs. What surveillance had captured earlier, at his residence, was him loading the truck with trash bags. White bags with red handles, matching a description provided by the family's housekeeper, and a tarp. At the Boerne gas station, those trash bags were no longer visible in the truck bed. He also changed his footwear while there, switching into cowboy boots. That evening, friends filed a missing persons report at 9:57 p.m. 14 minutes later, at 10:11 p.m., Brad left a voicemail for the Olmos Park police chief. Not 911, but the chief's personal line. In it, he described Suzanne as missing since the night before, repeated the claim about a lost phone at HEB, and expressed no urgency. The following day, October 8th, Brad wrote notes. Handwritten apologies for assaulting Suzanne. One addressed the incident from August 2023. The other addressed what he had done on the night of October 6th. He wrote them out. He kept them. On October 9th, 3 days after Suzanne disappeared, law enforcement arrested Brad Simpson in Kendall County. The initial charges were assault of a family member and unlawful restraint, but what authorities found when they searched the property told a far more significant story. A laptop had been burned. Multiple cell phones belonging to Brad were recovered. There was an electric, handheld reciprocating saw on the property. When forensic technicians examined that saw, they found DNA. It matched Suzanne. Court documents would later indicate that Brad had concealed the saw after Suzanne's disappearance. He had also been in possession of a prohibited weapon, a separate charge added to the growing list. When Texas Rangers searched Brad's truck on October 10th, they found his blood inside it. Inside the Simpson home, investigators documented a newly formed indentation at the base of the stairway. Damage their 5-year-old daughter later identified as something that had not been there before that night, a structural mark in a home. The kind that happens when a body makes contact with a wall. Investigators also interviewed James Cotter, a longtime business associate and friend of Brad's. Texas Rangers brought him in separately. The specifics of what Cotter told investigators have not been fully disclosed, but the fact that Rangers prioritized the interview signals its relevance to the overall investigation. When Brad was arrested, the affidavit noted that he showed little emotion. Not distress, not confusion, not the reaction of a husband whose wife had been missing for 3 days. On November 7th, 2024, sources confirmed that prosecutors were moving toward a murder charge. The formal arrest affidavit was unsealed on November 12th, and the full weight of accumulated evidence became public record. Brad Simpson was charged with murder, a charge that carries the weight of presumed death even in the total absence of a body. This is legally rare but not unprecedented. Prosecutors must demonstrate that no reasonable alternative explains the totality of evidence. In this case, they had a documented history of physical violence against the victim, an eyewitness to a violent struggle on the night of disappearance, a child's first-hand account of an attack, a saw with the victim's DNA, burned devices, movements consistent with body disposal, and written admissions by the accused himself. Brad Simpson remained in Bexar County Jail as of October 2025, with his murder trial tentatively scheduled for February 2026. He has not been convicted. The legal process is ongoing. Suzanne has still not been found. Grief, when it has no grave, no closure, no answer, does things to people. Suzanne's family has lived with a specific and unresolvable kind of pain for over a year. Her body has not been recovered. There has been no funeral, no confirmed moment of goodbye. In October 2025, Suzanne's sister, Teresa Clark, was arrested in Travis County. She had sent emails and voicemails to 4 of Brad's family members, accusing them of involvement in Suzanne's death. The messages were characterized by authorities as harassment. Teresa was charged accordingly. Whatever one thinks of those actions, they came from somewhere. From a fear of not knowing, of watching a legal process move at its own pace, of carrying a truth that feels undeniable while the body of the person you loved remains somewhere, unconfirmed, unfound, unreturned. Texas Rangers and Olmos Park investigators have described this case as one that continues to haunt them. That language, haunt, is deliberate. It is the word investigators use when a case has been built, a suspect charged, but the central fact of a human being's whereabouts remains unknown. The searches have not stopped. As of the date of this video, no remains have been discovered. There is something in this case that goes beyond the evidence timeline, beyond the charges and the courtroom dates. It is the fact that Suzanne saw this coming. She told someone. She named specifically what she was afraid of. And that warning was not enough to change what happened. Domestic violence cases carry a specific danger that is often invisible to those outside them. The escalation is not always visible until it becomes irreversible. The control over phones, over finances, over movement operates in the background of an apparently normal life. Suzanne lived in a neighborhood defined by comfort. She had a career, a social network, people who loved her, and still, she had said out loud, "Look for me in a lake." People who recognized the warning signs in this case, the phone seizures, the documented assault, the prior police report, have described watching the aftermath with a kind of helpless recognition. The pattern was there. The infrastructure to act on it was not sufficient. The 5-year-old daughter that Suzanne and Brad raised together is now being cared for by family. She is the child who told a school counselor what she had seen. She is the child who, without knowing the legal weight of her words, helped investigators understand what happened in that house. She is also the child who lost her mother on a Sunday night in October and is being raised in the shadows of that loss. Brad Simpson's trial is scheduled for February 2026. What happens in that courtroom will determine the legal outcome. It will not determine what happened on the night of October 6th. Investigators believe they already know that. It will not return Suzanne to her family. It will not answer the question that every search team, every investigator, every person who knew Suzanne has been living with for over a year. Where is she? Searches have covered terrain across South Texas. Tips have been followed. The case remains open in that specific and brutal way. The kind where the legal mechanism moves forward, while the most human part of it, the finding of a person, remains unresolved. Investigators have described it as a case that stays with you, the kind you do not put down at the end of a shift. Suzanne Clark Simpson was 37 years old. She was a mother. She was someone who told the truth about what was happening to her, who warned people, who reached out on the night it became unsurvivable. She deserves to be found. Her family deserves that answer. And until it comes, her case remains exactly what investigators have called it: unfinished.